I'm Natalie, and last Christmas, my dad called me a burden and kicked me out during dinner. What he didn't realize was that I'd been paying over $2,000 monthly to keep their lives afloat. The next day, I canceled everything. Their mortgage, utilities, car payments, insurance, phones, internet, all gone. The fallout was both devastating and vindicating. Families should support each other, not exploit one member until they break. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever had to stand up for yourself against family who took advantage of your kindness. Trust me, what happened after I cut them off financially will shock you. Growing up, we were what most people would call a typical middle-class American family. We lived in a modest four-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood with good schools. My dad, Walter, worked as a sales manager for a manufacturing company, while my mom, Judith, taught part-time at the local elementary school. My younger brother Tyler and I had comfortable, if not extravagant, childhoods. We went on annual vacations, had birthday parties, and generally lived without worrying about money. That all changed about 5 years ago when Dad lost his job during company-wide layoffs. He was 52 at the time, and finding comparable employment proved challenging. "They want younger guys, they can pay less," he'd complain after interviews. "Nobody values experience anymore." Initially, he searched diligently, but after 6 months of rejections, his efforts became increasingly sporadic. Eventually, he settled into a routine of watching TV, browsing the internet, and making half-hearted inquiries about positions far below his qualifications. Mom increased her teaching hours, but still only worked part-time. Her income covered groceries and some utilities, but not much else. She constantly made excuses for Dad. He's still processing the blow to his self-esteem, or he's networking online. In reality, he was watching sports and placing occasional bets, which only worsened our financial situation. Throughout this period, our family home began showing signs of neglect. The once manicured lawn grew patchy and overgrown. The kitchen faucet developed a persistent leak. The basement had a musty smell that suggested water damage. None of these issues were addressed because money was tight. Meanwhile, I had carved out my own path. Despite my parents' lukewarm support for higher education, college is expensive and jobs aren't guaranteed. I attended State University on scholarships and part-time work. I graduated with a marketing degree and secured a position at a digital advertising agency in the city, about 30 minutes from my childhood home. My career progressed steadily. By my late 20s, I was a senior account manager handling major clients. I had my own apartment, a healthy savings account, and was planning to buy property. Then, 2 years ago, a serious relationship ended painfully. My ex and I had shared an apartment, and suddenly I needed a new place to live. "Why don't you come home for a while?" Mom suggested. "Save some money until you find the right place." It seemed reasonable. I'd stay for 3 months, maybe 6 at most, rebuild emotionally, and move on. What was meant to be temporary gradually became permanent. Shortly after moving back, I noticed past due bills on the kitchen counter. When I asked about them, Mom broke down and confessed they were 3 months behind on the mortgage. Without thinking twice, I wrote a check to bring it current. "Just until Dad finds something," she assured me. That was the beginning. Soon, I was covering not just the mortgage, $1,200 monthly, but also utilities, $350, internet and streaming services, $150, both parents' car payments, $450, our family cell phone plan, $200, and various insurance policies, $300. The expenses totaled over $2,600 monthly, not including groceries, home repairs, and other incidentals I often handled. I didn't mind initially. I was earning good money, and helping families seemed natural. I even felt a certain pride in being able to support them. However, as months passed, the dynamic shifted. My financial contributions weren't met with gratitude, but expectation. When I'd mention looking at apartments, Mom would tear up. "How will we manage the mortgage without you?" Dad would grumble about fair-weather family, who abandon each other during tough times. My brother Tyler, now 25, still lived at home too. Unlike me, He had dropped out of community college and cycled through a series of part-time jobs, none lasting more than a few months. He contributed nothing financially, spent hours gaming, and expected me to fund his phone, internet, and various subscriptions. When I suggested he look for steadier employment, he'd snap, "Not everyone can be Little Miss Perfect with her fancy office job." The resentment in our household grew palpable. I felt it in the silence when I came home late from work, in the passive-aggressive comments about my expensive tastes if I bought myself new clothes, in the eye rolls when I mentioned work accomplishments. Somehow, my success had become an affront to my family rather than a source of pride. The house I had grown up in no longer felt like home. Instead, it felt like a financial prison where I was both inmate and warden, trapped by obligation and guilt. Every attempt to discuss moving out was met with emotional manipulation, so effective it would make a hostage negotiator impressed. I began to feel invisible except when bills were due. The week before Christmas intensified every frustration I'd been suppressing. Despite my growing resentment, I wanted the holidays to be special. I spent nearly $1,000 on gifts, a new flat-screen TV for the living room, an expensive watch for Dad, a designer handbag Mom had admired months earlier, and the latest gaming console for Tyler. I ordered a full holiday meal from an upscale grocery store, bought a fresh tree, and decorated the house while everyone else was too busy to help. On December 23rd, while wrapping presents in my bedroom, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. "Having Natalie here complicates things," Dad said. "She's always watching what we do, judging how we live." "She does pay the bills, Walter," Mom replied quietly. "It's the least she could do, living under our roof." This is still our house. I froze, gift wrap crumpling in my hands. Our house? The one I'd been making mortgage payments on for 18 months? The one that would have been foreclosed without my contributions. I wanted to storm downstairs and confront them, but something held me back. Maybe it was shock, maybe it was the upcoming holiday, or maybe I wasn't ready to face what I already knew. I was being used. That same day, while scrolling through rental listings during my lunch break, I found it a beautiful one-bedroom apartment in a renovated historical building downtown. Hardwood floors, exposed brick walls, walking distance to my office, and within my budget. My finger hovered over the schedule viewing button, but I hesitated. Christmas was 2 days away. I couldn't disrupt the holiday. I bookmarked the listing, promising myself I'd revisit it after New Year's. Christmas Eve brought our extended family gathering. Uncle Roger, Dad's younger brother, had driven up from Virginia with his wife and teenage daughters. Roger had always been the more successful sibling, a fact that perpetually irritated my father. During appetizers, Roger asked about my work. "I hear you're killing it in the advertising world, Natalie. Your cousin follows your company's campaigns and says they're brilliant." Before I could answer, Dad interjected, "She just sits at a computer all day. Any kid could do it." "Actually," I said, maintaining my composure, "I was promoted to team lead last month. I'm now managing our automotive division accounts." Uncle Roger raised his glass. "That's fantastic. Always knew you'd do great things." I noticed Dad's jaw tightening, his knuckles whitening around his beer bottle. Mom quickly changed the subject to Roger's daughter's college applications, while Dad retreated to the kitchen for another drink. Later that evening, after everyone had left, I received an email that would normally have been cause for celebration. My boss offered me a significant promotion, marketing director with a 30% salary increase, effective January 15th. I should have been ecstatic, but instead, I felt a strange hollowness. Success meant nothing when the people who should be proudest of you resented every achievement. Christmas morning arrived crisp and clear, with fresh snow blanketing our neighborhood. I woke early, made coffee, and arranged the presents under the tree. Mom came down around 9, followed by Dad and Tyler closer to 10. We gathered in the living room for our traditional gift exchange. I watched eagerly as they unwrapped my carefully selected presents. Mom seemed genuinely touched by the handbag, though she quickly added, "It's lovely, but so extravagant. You shouldn't spend your money this way." Dad barely looked at the watch, setting it aside with a muttered thanks. Tyler showed the most enthusiasm for his gaming console until he realized I hadn't included the specific games he wanted. "These aren't even the good ones," he complained. "The ones I wanted were on the list I sent you." "Those can be your birthday presents," I said, trying to maintain the holiday spirit. When it came time for me to open my gifts, I received a scarf from Mom, the same one I'd given her 2 Christmases ago, a $25 gas station gift card from Dad, and nothing from Tyler, who claimed he hadn't had time to shop yet. I swallowed my disappointment. "Thank you for these. By the way, I have some news I'd like to share at dinner. Something good about work." No one acknowledged my statement. Dad was already fiddling with a new TV, complaining about the setup instructions, while Mom gathered the discarded wrapping paper. Tyler had disappeared back to his room with his console. As I prepared our Christmas dinner, I decided that regardless of their reaction, I would announce my plans to move out. The promotion provided the perfect opportunity, a natural transition point. I rehearsed what I'd say as I basted the turkey, peeled potatoes, and assembled the casseroles. I'd be positive but firm. I'd give them time to adjust their finances. I'd offer to help them create a budget. This could be a healthy change for everyone. I spent hours in the kitchen preparing what I hoped would be the perfect Christmas dinner. The turkey was golden and juicy, the mashed potatoes creamy, the green bean casserole bubbling with crispy onions on top. I made cranberry sauce from scratch, baked dinner rolls, and even prepared Dad's favorite pecan pie for dessert. The dining room table, rarely used except for holidays, was set with our best dishes, candles, and a festive centerpiece I had crafted myself. At 4 p.m., I called everyone to the table. Dad and Tyler were watching a basketball game and said they'd be there in a minute. Mom was on the phone with her sister. 20 minutes later, I called again, more insistently. The food was getting cold. They finally shuffled in around 4:30. Dad immediately reached for the wine bottle, filling his glass to the brim. Tyler slumped into his chair, still looking at his phone. Mom sat with a tired smile, admiring the spread. "This looks lovely, Natalie. You went all out." I beamed at the first genuine compliment of the day. "Thanks, Mom. I wanted to make it special." Dad took a bite of turkey and frowned. "It's a bit dry." "I followed Grandma's recipe exactly," I said, my smile faltering. "Well, she knew how to keep it moist. And these potatoes need more salt." Tyler poked at his green beans. "I don't like the mushrooms in this. You know I hate mushrooms." "That's how the recipe is made, Tyler. It's a classic." "Could have made it without for me," he muttered. I took a deep breath and a large sip of wine. This was still going to be the moment I announced my news. I wouldn't let their negativity derail my plans. As we moved from main course to dessert, I cleared my throat. "So, I wanted to share some news with everyone. I've been offered a promotion at work, marketing director, with a significant raise." "That's nice, dear," Mom said, without looking up from her pie. "The thing is," I continued, "with this new position, I think it's time for me to get my own place again. I've found an apartment I love, and I'm planning to move out in January." Silence descended on the table. Dad set down his fork with deliberate slowness. Mom's eyes widened in alarm. Tyler stopped mid-bite. "Move out," Mom finally said. "But why? You're saving so much money living here." "I've been here almost 2 years now, Mom. It was only supposed to be temporary, remember? And I'm not really saving money, considering I'm paying for most household expenses." Dad's face darkened. "So, that's what this is about? Money? We gave you a roof over your head when you had nowhere to go." "I appreciate that, Dad, but I'm 30 years old. I need my own space." "Your own space," he mimicked. "What about family responsibility? What about loyalty?" I tried to stay calm. "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'll help you create a budget to manage expenses. You might need to downsize some things, but with proper planning." "Downsize?" Tyler interrupted. "What does that mean? Are you cutting off the internet? My gaming subscriptions?" "Not immediately, but you might need to contribute to those costs, Tyler. You're 25. Maybe it's time you—" "Oh, here we go," he shouted. Saint Natalie telling everyone how to live. Dad's face had grown increasingly red. He'd refilled his wine glass several times during dinner, and the alcohol amplified his anger. You think you're better than us with your fancy job and your downtown apartment? You've been judging us from the moment you moved back in. That's not true, I protested. I've been trying to help. Help. He slammed his hand on the table, making the dishes rattle. You've been lording it over us, showing off how successful you are while your father can't find decent work. Walter, Mom interjected weakly. No, Judith, she needs to hear this. He turned back to me, eyes blazing. You have no idea what it's like to struggle, to be rejected over and over. You've had everything handed to you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Handed to me? I worked through college. I built my career, from entry level. And for the past 2 years, I've been handing you over $2,000 every month to keep this household running. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd crossed a line. Not because what I said wasn't true, but because I had shattered the pretense we'd all been living under, that my financial contributions were temporary assistance rather than permanent subsidy. Dad pushed back from the table, his chair screeching against the hardwood floor. You've always been a burden, Natalie. From the day you were born, always wanting, always taking. Now you throw your charity in our faces? Just get out. Get out of my house. Your house. I whispered, tears forming. The house I've been making mortgage payments on for 2 years? Walter, please, Mom pleaded, but her intervention was half-hearted at best. You heard him, Princess, Tyler added, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Time for you to go find out what the real world is like without Mommy and Daddy. I looked at Mom, desperately hoping she would defend me, say something, anything to counteract this cruelty. She stared at her plate, shoulders hunched. Mom, I whispered. Maybe it would be best if you stayed with a friend for a few days, she said quietly, until things cool down. In that moment, something inside me broke and reformed into something harder, colder. I stood up, surprisingly steady despite feeling like my world was collapsing. Merry Christmas, I said flatly, then walked upstairs to my room. I closed the door and leaned against it, tears streaming down my face. How had helping my family turned into this? How had love become transactional? I allowed myself 5 minutes of sobbing before a strange calm overtook me. If they wanted me gone, I would go, but not without consequences. I pulled out my suitcases and began packing essentials. Clothes, toiletries, important documents, sentimental items I couldn't bear to leave behind. I could hear the TV blaring downstairs. They had resumed their normal activities as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't just shattered our family. Around 8 p.m., I carried my bags downstairs. No one looked up as I passed through the living room. No one asked where I was going or if I'd be safe. No one said goodbye. I loaded my car in the bitter cold, snowflakes settling on my hair and eyelashes, melting with my tears. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced back at the house glowing with Christmas lights I had hung. It no longer represented home. It represented years of one-sided sacrifice. With nowhere else to go on Christmas night, I drove to the Holiday Inn by the highway and checked in. The receptionist, a kind-faced woman named Patricia, noticed my red eyes and tear-stained face. Rough holiday? She asked gently. You could say that, I replied. Well, we've got a hot breakfast buffet in the morning and fresh coffee all night. Sometimes, the best Christmas gift is just a clean, quiet room of your own. I thanked her and made my way to room 218, where I would spend Christmas night alone, but strangely, for the first time in years, not feeling lonely. In the sterile quiet of room 218, I sat cross-legged on the hotel bed, surrounded by the few possessions I'd managed to grab. The numbness that had carried me through my exit was wearing off, replaced by waves of emotion that crashed over me with increasing intensity. First came shock. Had that really happened? Had my father actually thrown me out on Christmas Day? Had my mother really sat silently as I was banished? Had my brother actually mocked me as I left? I replayed the dinner scene over and over, wondering if I had somehow misinterpreted or overreacted. But the memory of Dad's words, "You've always been a burden," confirmed I hadn't imagined the cruelty. Shock gave way to grief, so profound it manifested physically. My chest ached as if my heart were literally breaking. I curled into a fetal position, hugging a pillow against my stomach, and wept until no more tears would come. I grieved not just for tonight's disaster, but for the loving family I had thought we were, or at least could become again. Around midnight, anger began to simmer beneath my sadness. I pulled out my laptop and created a spreadsheet, methodically listing every bill I had paid since moving back home. Mortgage payments, $25,200. Utilities, $7,350. Car payments, $9,450. Insurance, $6,300. Cell phones, $4,200. Internet and subscriptions, $3,150. Miscellaneous expenses, repairs, groceries, approximately $8,000. The total stared back at me from the screen, $63,650. Over $63,000 in less than 2 years. Money I could have invested in my own home. Money that had disappeared into a black hole of entitlement and unacknowledged support. As I reviewed the numbers, my anger hardened into resolve. They had called me a burden while simultaneously depending on me for financial survival. They had mocked my success while benefiting from its fruits. They had demanded loyalty while showing none in return. I opened a new browser tab and logged into my banking portal. From there, I navigated to bill payments, automatic transfers, and joint accounts. I began researching the cancellation policies for each service I managed. Some required phone calls during business hours. Others could be handled online immediately. At 1:30 a.m., my phone rang. It was Jessica, my closest friend from college, who lived about an hour away.
Net.
I just saw your text. Are you seriously in a hotel on Christmas? What happened? I explained the evening's events, my voice surprisingly steady as I recounted the confrontation. Those ungrateful. Jessica didn't finish her sentence.
Pack up right now.
You're coming to stay with me until you figure things out.
It's late, Jess.
And you have your in-laws visiting. They leave tomorrow. And I don't care what time it is. My couch is better than a hotel room, and you shouldn't be alone. I hesitated, then agreed. I'll head over in the morning. I need some time to process things tonight. Promise me you're okay for now. I'm angry, hurt, and completely done being used. But yes, I'm okay. After hanging up, I returned to my spreadsheet and began formulating a plan. Column A listed each financial responsibility I currently handled. Column B detailed the steps needed to remove myself from each obligation. Column C contained the timeline for execution. By 3 a.m., I had a comprehensive strategy for financial separation. The mortgage company opened at 9 a.m. The utility companies at 8 a.m. The cell phone provider had 24/7 customer service. One by one, I would sever these financial tethers. I finally fell asleep as dawn approached, emotionally exhausted but empowered by having a concrete plan. For the first time in years, I would prioritize myself. I woke to my alarm at 7:30 a.m., showered, and dressed in the clothes I'd packed. At precisely 8:00 a.m., I began making calls. First, the electric company. I'd like to remove myself from account #87542B and transfer billing responsibility to Walter and Judith Lewis. Certainly, Ms. Lewis. Since you're the primary account holder, we'll need to create a new account for them. They'll need to provide a security deposit of $150 due to the account's previous late payment history. I made note of this detail. That's fine. Please process the change effective immediately. Next, water and gas utilities. Similar conversations, similar outcomes. Both services would require new deposits from my parents due to previous late payments I had rectified. At 9 a.m., I called the mortgage company. I've been making payments on my parents' mortgage, account #45873-92, but I need to stop this arrangement immediately. Are you listed on the mortgage, Ms. Lewis? No, I've been making payments on their behalf through automatic transfers from my account. In that case, you can simply cancel those transfers. The responsibility remains with the primary mortgage holders. And if payments aren't made, after 30 days, the account becomes delinquent. After 90 days, foreclosure proceedings may begin. I cancel the automatic transfers and made detailed notes about the foreclosure timeline. The cell phone company was particularly helpful. Since I was the primary account holder, I had options. You can remove them from your family plan, but they'd lose their numbers, the representative explained. Is there an alternative that lets them keep their numbers but takes me off financial responsibility? We can do a transfer of liability. They'd need to qualify for their own plan based on credit, and there would be a new deposit required. Perfect. Let's do that. In the meantime, can you restrict their lines to emergency calls only until they set up payment? Absolutely. That change will take effect immediately. By noon, I had systematically disentangled myself from every financial obligation. The streaming services were canceled. The insurance policies were notified of non-renewal. The internet provider was scheduled for disconnection in 48 hours. I drafted a formal email detailing all changes made and the steps my family would need to take to establish their own accounts. I included contact information for each company, account numbers, and approximate costs they should expect. My tone was businesslike and devoid of emotion, the same courtesy they had shown me at Christmas dinner. As per your request that I leave the household immediately, I have removed myself from all financial responsibilities effective today. Attached is information about establishing your own accounts for continued service. I will be collecting my remaining belongings on Saturday between 2 o'clock and 4 p.m. I hit send, checked out of the hotel, and drove to Jessica's house. She greeted me with a tight hug and helped carry my bags inside. I called that apartment building you mentioned, she said, settling me on her couch with a cup of tea. They have a unit available February 1st. I put down the deposit in your name. Jess, you didn't have to. Consider it done. You can pay me back whenever. Right now, you need to focus on taking care of yourself for once. For the next week, I stayed with Jessica, sleeping on her comfortable pull-out couch and slowly regaining my emotional equilibrium. I forwarded my mail, updated my address with my employer, and created a budget that, for the first time in years, included only my own expenses. The relief was immense. Without $2,600 in monthly family support, my financial situation transformed. I could max out my 401k contributions. I could build a proper emergency fund. I could even plan a vacation, something I hadn't done since before moving back home. On New Year's Eve, instead of the usual family gathering I would have attended out of obligation, Jessica and I joined friends at a downtown celebration. At midnight, as fireworks exploded overhead and people cheered the beginning of a new year, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. This year would be different. This year would be mine. 3 days into January, the first text messages arrived. Initially, they came from Mom, their tone vacillating between guilt-inducing sorrow and passive-aggressive accusations. The internet stopped working. Tyler can't submit his job applications. The electric company says we need a $150 deposit. Why would you do this to us? I thought you were just taking time to cool off. We didn't think you'd actually abandon your family. I read each message multiple times before deciding not to respond. Any explanation I offered would be twisted or dismissed. My detailed email had explained everything they needed to know. By January 5th, Dad started calling. I let each call go to voicemail, then steeled myself to listen. Natalie, this is your father. Whatever point you're trying to make, you've made it. Turn the internet back on. This childishness is beneath you. His second message abandoned the pretense of composure. Do you have any idea what you've done? The mortgage company called about missed payments. They mentioned foreclosure. You can't just walk away from your responsibilities. My responsibilities. The irony might have been funny if it weren't so infuriating. The third voicemail, left after midnight, revealed the desperation behind the anger. Natalie, please. We need your help. Your mother is beside herself with worry. Just call us back. We can work something out. Tyler's messages were the most transparent in their self-interest. Hey sis, I know dad was harsh, but cutting off my gaming subscriptions? Low blow. My friends are asking why I'm not online. This is humiliating. Can you at least pay for the internet until I find a job? I promise I'm looking. On January 10th, Jessica texted me during my lunch break. Your mom just showed up at my office crying. She's trying to find out where you're staying. I didn't tell her anything, but heads up. That evening, my phone exploded with texts from extended family members. Aunt Peggy, your parents are struggling. Whatever happened, family should come first. Uncle Roger, there are two sides to every story. I'd like to hear yours. Cousin Bethany, is it true you cut off all their utilities out of spite? Clearly, my parents were controlling the narrative, casting themselves as victims of my sudden, inexplicable cruelty. I drafted a simple response to send to anyone who asked. I supported my family financially for 2 years. When they told me I was a burden and kicked me out on Christmas Day, I respected their wishes and removed myself from all aspects of their lives, including financial ones. The reactions to this message varied from shocked sympathy to disbelief. Family loyalties divided along predictable lines. Some demanded I be the bigger person and reinstate support. Others expressed outrage at how I'd been treated. A few admitted they'd noticed concerning patterns in my parents' behavior for years. 2 weeks after Christmas, Jessica and I were having dinner at a restaurant when she suddenly tensed, looking over my shoulder. Don't turn around, she whispered. Your dad just walked in. My heart raced. Is he alone? No, your mom's with him. They're being seated on the other side of the restaurant. Did they see us? I don't think so. Do you want to leave? I considered it, then shook my head.
No.
I'm not hiding or running anymore. We continued our meal, though my appetite had vanished. About 20 minutes later, I felt a presence at our table. I looked up to see Mom standing there, her eyes red-rimmed. Natalie, she said softly, can we talk? I have nothing to say that wasn't in my email. Please, honey. We made a mistake. We were upset and said things we didn't mean. Where's Dad? Is he ready to apologize too? Her hesitation told me everything. He's still adjusting to the situation. The situation he created?
No, Mom.
I'm not interested in a one-sided reconciliation where I'm expected to forget what happened and resume financial support while Dad continues to treat me like a burden. But we can't afford the mortgage without you. We might lose the house. That was always a possibility when Dad stopped looking for work and you enabled him. I postponed the inevitable by sacrificing my own financial security, but I won't do it anymore. Her face crumpled. How can you be so cold? I learned from experts, I replied, placing money on the table for my share of the bill. Excuse me, Jessica, and I were just leaving. As we walked out, I passed Dad, who sat glowering at his untouched meal. Our eyes met briefly. His were filled with a mixture of anger and something I hadn't seen before, fear. The following week, I received a certified letter from a law firm representing my father. It claimed I had established a verbal contract by paying household expenses and couldn't legally withdraw support without proper notice. The letter demanded I resume payments immediately or face legal action. I forwarded the letter to a lawyer friend, Vanessa, who called me laughing. This is absurd. There's no verbal contract. You are making voluntary payments. They can't force you to continue, especially after kicking you out. Want me to respond? Please do, I said, relieved to have professional confirmation that I wasn't legally obligated to support my family. Vanessa's formal response apparently shut down that avenue of manipulation, as no further legal threats materialized. Instead, the tactics grew more desperate. Anonymous calls to my workplace suggesting I had mental health issues. Social media posts from Tyler claiming I had abandoned our sick parents, neither of whom had any health problems. Tearful appeals from Mom to mutual friends, who then called me concerned. Throughout this difficult period, I maintained my focus on rebuilding my life. I started therapy with Dr. Elena Martinez, who specialized in family dynamics and financial abuse. Our weekly sessions helped me recognize patterns I'd normalized: the guilt-inducing language, the minimization of my contributions, the constant moving of goalposts for earning approval. What you're describing is financial exploitation, Dr. Martinez explained during one session. Your role in the family became that of provider, but without the authority or respect typically afforded to that position. Instead, you were simultaneously expected to provide financially and remain subservient in the family hierarchy. This framework helped me understand why the situation had felt so unbearable. It wasn't just about money. It was about power, respect, and recognizing my worth beyond what I could provide materially. As January ended, I moved into my new apartment. The exposed brick walls, tall windows, and hardwood floors represented more than just aesthetic preferences. They symbolized my reclaimed independence. I furnished it slowly, thoughtfully, enjoying the process of creating a space that was entirely mine. I also reconnected with friends I'd neglected during my years of family obligation. Weekend brunches, movie nights, even a book club I'd always wanted to join but never had time for. I started dating again, casually at first, then meeting Benjamin, a landscape architect with kind eyes and a talent for making me laugh. At work, freed from the constant drain of family drama, my performance soared. I tackled the marketing director position with energy and creativity, earning praise from clients and colleagues alike. For the first time in years, I felt fully present in my own life, not constantly calculating how to manage everyone else's. By mid-February, reports from mutual friends painted a grim picture of my family situation. The mortgage was officially in pre-foreclosure. Dad's car had been repossessed after 3 missed payments. The utilities had been shut off briefly before being reinstated with minimum payments. My parents were fighting constantly, their arguments audible to neighbors. Tyler had apparently moved in with his friend Marcus, unable to tolerate the deteriorating conditions at home. According to Marcus's sister, who worked with Jessica, Tyler blamed me entirely for the family's hardships. If Natalie hadn't abandoned us, none of this would be happening, he reportedly said, conveniently forgetting the role he played in driving me away. The narrative my parents shared with neighbors and church members portrayed me as an ungrateful daughter who had suddenly, inexplicably cut off support, leaving them destitute. This version omitted the Christmas confrontation, the years of financial dependence, and their complete lack of planning for self-sufficiency. I maintained my silence, refusing to engage in public reputation management. The truth would eventually become clear to anyone paying attention. Meanwhile, I focused on healing and building my new life. In late February, a surprising ally emerged. Aunt Susan, Dad's older sister, called me out of the blue. "Natalie, it's your Aunt Susan. I've been hearing concerning things about your situation with your parents. I'd like to hear your perspective if you're willing to share it." Unlike other family members who had contacted me, Aunt Susan's tone lacked judgment or presumption. I agreed to meet her for coffee the following Saturday. At the cafe, Aunt Susan listened attentively as I recounted the Christmas dinner, the years of financial support, and the complete lack of acknowledgement or gratitude. "I believe you," she said simply when I finished. "And I'm deeply sorry this happened. Walter's behavior reminds me of our father's, the entitlement, the inability to accept responsibility, the manipulation." She explained that she had noticed patterns in my parents' behavior during family gatherings, but hadn't realized the extent of their financial dependence on me. "There's something else you should know," she added, lowering her voice. "I've been looking into why they're struggling so badly since you left. It's not just the lost income from your contributions. Walter has a gambling problem." This revelation stunned me. I knew Dad occasionally bet on sports, but hadn't suspected a serious addiction. "How do you know?" "I have access to their bank statements because I co-signed for their second mortgage years ago. There are regular withdrawals at casino ATMs going back years. Thousands of dollars, Natalie. I think your financial support wasn't just covering their living expenses, it was enabling Walter's gambling." The pieces suddenly fit together. Dad's resistance to job hunting, the perpetual money shortages despite my substantial contributions, the secretive behavior I'd observed but dismissed. I felt sick thinking about how my help had actually fueled destruction. Aunt Susan took my hand. This isn't your fault. Addiction is powerful, and enablers often don't realize what they're doing. Judith probably doesn't even fully understand what's happening. Armed with this new understanding, I felt less angry but more resolved to maintain boundaries. Enabling Dad's gambling wasn't helping anyone, least of all him. The confrontation I had been avoiding finally occurred in early March. I arrived home from work to find my parents sitting in a car outside my apartment building. My first instinct was to ignore them and hurry inside, but I decided it was time to face this directly. I approached the driver's side where Dad sat. "What are you doing here?" "We need to talk," he said through the rolled-down window. His face looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders. "I have nothing to say to you. Please, Natalie," Mom pleaded from the passenger seat. "Just give us 5 minutes. We're losing everything." Against my better judgment, I agreed to 5 minutes, suggesting the coffee shop across the street rather than inviting them into my home. Once seated with beverages none of us touched, Dad launched into his prepared speech. "We've had time to reflect on our behavior, and we realize we were unfair to you. The things said at Christmas were out of line, and we apologize." The words sounded rehearsed and hollow. Before I could respond, he continued, "We're asking you to reconsider your decision to cut us off. We can work out a reasonable monthly contribution that won't burden you too much. Maybe start with the mortgage and utilities, and we can figure out the rest." I stared at him, incredulous. "That's not an apology. That's a financial negotiation. You're not sorry for how you treated me. You're sorry you lost your meal ticket." "That's not fair," Mom interjected. "We love you, Natalie. We miss you."
Do you?
Because I haven't heard either of you acknowledge the real problem. For 2 years, I supported this family while being treated like an unwelcome guest. Dad called me a burden while I was paying his mortgage. Tyler mocked my career while benefiting from my success. And you, Mom, sat silently while I was thrown out on Christmas Day. Dad's face darkened with familiar anger. "You're twisting everything. We gave you a home when you needed one. And I gave you over $60,000. I postponed my own life goals to keep you afloat. I deserved basic respect, if not gratitude. So this is about money?" Dad sneered. "You're punishing us because you think we owe you?" "No, this is about recognizing that I have value beyond my paycheck. This is about you taking responsibility for your own lives instead of exploiting mine." As Dad's face reddened further, I lowered my voice and leaned in. "I know about the gambling, Dad. Aunt Susan found the withdrawals." The color drained from his face. Mom looked confused, then horrified as understanding dawned. "Walter? What is she talking about?" Dad stood abruptly, knocking over his untouched coffee. "This conversation is over. Come on, Judith." "No," Mom said, remaining seated. "What gambling, Walter?" "Your husband has been draining thousands from your accounts at casinos," I explained. "That's why you never had enough money despite my contributions." Dad slammed his hand on the table. "You don't know what you're talking about. Susan had no right to go through our finances." His outburst attracted attention from nearby patrons. A barista approached our table. "Is everything okay here?" "No," I said calmly. "These people were just leaving." "This isn't over," Dad hissed, grabbing Mom's arm and pulling her toward the door. "Actually, it is," I replied. "Don't come to my home again." After they left, I sat shaking, sipping cold coffee, and processing what had just happened. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "I didn't know about the gambling. We need to talk. Just us." I didn't respond immediately. This revelation was clearly shocking to her, but it didn't erase her role in enabling Dad's behavior or her failure to support me. Still, it explained some of her actions. 2 days later, my brother Tyler showed up at my office. The receptionist, Gabriella, called to warn me. "There's a young man claiming to be your brother. He seems agitated. Should I call security?" "No, I'll handle it," I sighed. "Send him to the conference room. I'll be right there." Tyler paced the small room like a caged animal. He looked worse than I expected, unshaven, hair unwashed, wearing the same hoodie he'd had on at Christmas. What do you want, Tyler? I asked from the doorway. Everything's falling apart. Dad and Mom are divorcing. We're losing the house. Dad's staying with his buddy Rick, and Mom's crashing on Aunt Susan's couch. I'm still at Marcus's, but his girlfriend hates me and wants me out. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, genuinely meaning it despite everything. But I don't see how this involves me. Don't you get it? You destroyed our family.
No, Tyler.
Our family was already broken. I just stopped holding the pieces together at my own expense. He slumped into a chair. So what am I supposed to do now? Live on the street. You're 25 years old.
Get a job.
Pay your own bills. Become an independent adult, like most people your age. That's easy for you to say. You've always been the smart one, the successful one. I've been the one willing to work hard and make sacrifices for my goals. You could do the same if you tried. Tyler stared at the floor. I wouldn't even know where to start. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy. Tyler had been raised in the same dysfunctional environment that had nearly consumed me. The difference was, I had escaped while he remained immersed in it. Start by updating your resume. Apply for any job, even if it's not ideal. Save every penny. Create a budget and stick to it. Will you help me? He asked, his voice small. Not with money, he added quickly, seeing my expression. Just advice. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. I considered his request. Setting boundaries didn't mean cutting off all contact forever. It meant establishing healthy interactions that respected both parties. I'll meet you for lunch once a week to help with job applications and budgeting. No money. No moving in with me. No drama about Mom and Dad. Just practical support to help you become independent. Deal? He nodded, relief evident on his face.
Deal.
The following weekend, Aunt Susan organized what she called a family truth session at her house. She invited me, my parents, Tyler, and herself, the core people affected by the situation. Everyone gets to speak without interruption, she explained as we sat in her living room, tension thick in the air. No accusations, just statements about feelings and experiences. I'll mediate. Dad initially refused to participate, sitting with arms crossed and jaw set. Mom looked exhausted but determined. Tyler fidgeted nervously. I spoke first, presenting a calm, factual account of my experience, moving home after a breakup, gradually taking on financial responsibilities, feeling unappreciated and ultimately rejected despite my contributions. Mom went next, tearfully acknowledging her failure to stand up for me or recognize the extent of my support. I was so afraid of rocking the boat, of making Walter angry, that I sacrificed my relationship with you.
I'm deeply sorry, Natalie.
Tyler admitted to resentment over my success and his own lack of direction. It was easier to blame you than face my own shortcomings. I treated you terribly, and I'm ashamed of that. When Dad's turn came, he initially remained silent. Aunt Susan waited patiently until he finally spoke. I lost more than my job 5 years ago. I lost my identity, my purpose. Each rejection reinforced my sense of worthlessness. Gambling gave me a temporary escape and the false hope of solving our financial problems with one big win. Instead, I dug us deeper into a hole I couldn't admit existed. He looked at me directly for the first time. I took my failure out on you, Natalie. I resented your success because it highlighted my failures. That Christmas night, when you announced your promotion and moving plans, something in me snapped. I saw myself losing control of the situation, losing the financial support I'd come to depend on. So I lashed out in the cruelest way possible. His admission wasn't a complete apology, but it was honest, perhaps the most honest he'd been in years. Aunt Susan then presented documents revealing the full extent of Dad's gambling, nearly $40,000 lost over 3 years, hidden through cash withdrawals and secret credit cards. This family has been operating on secrets, shame, and displacement of responsibility, she concluded. Financial problems are often symptoms of deeper issues. Walter needs addiction counseling. Judith needs to develop independence. Tyler needs to establish his own adult identity. And Natalie needs acknowledgement and respect. As difficult as this intervention was, it marked a turning point. The family's secrets were exposed, the dysfunctional patterns named. We left Aunt Susan's house that day with no magical reconciliation, but with a clearer understanding of how we had reached this breaking point. 6 months after the Christmas confrontation that shattered our family, significant changes had occurred for everyone involved. The foreclosure on my parents' house had proceeded, forcing them to downsize dramatically. They now lived separately, Dad in a one-bedroom apartment near his new job as a restaurant manager, Mom in a small rental house she shared with a college friend. The transition hadn't been easy for either of them. Dad attended Gamblers Anonymous meetings twice weekly and worked with a financial counselor to develop a repayment plan for his considerable debts. He had taken the restaurant job despite initially considering it beneath his qualifications, and to everyone's surprise, was excelling. The structured environment, clear expectations, and regular social interaction seemed to fulfill needs he had previously tried to satisfy through gambling. Mom had increased her teaching hours to full-time and discovered a passion for adult literacy programs. She volunteered weekends at the community center, helping immigrants prepare for citizenship tests. The independence she had been forced to develop revealed strengths she hadn't known she possessed. Tyler had perhaps changed the most dramatically. After our weekly lunch meetings, he had secured an entry-level position at a local tech company's customer service department. He shared an apartment with 2 coworkers, paid his own bills, and had even started taking night classes at community college. He still struggled with budgeting and occasionally called asking for loans, which I politely declined, but he was making genuine progress towards self-sufficiency. As for me, the 6 months of distance had been healing. Dr. Martinez helped me process the complicated emotions around family obligation, financial abuse, and establishing healthy boundaries. I had progressed in my career, developed new friendships, and strengthened existing ones. My relationship with Benjamin had deepened, built on mutual respect and equality rather than dependency. Most importantly, I had reclaimed financial security. Without the $2,600 monthly drain supporting my family, I had built a proper emergency fund, maxed out my retirement contributions, and even begun saving for a down payment on a condo. The freedom from financial stress allowed me to sleep peacefully for the first time in years. After careful consideration and discussions with Dr. Martinez, I agreed to meet my parents individually for coffee. These controlled, time-limited interactions in public places allowed us to begin rebuilding communication without falling into old patterns. My first meeting with Mom was tearful, but productive. She had done her own therapy work and could now articulate her role in enabling Dad's behavior and failing to protect me from emotional abuse. "I was so afraid of being alone that I sacrificed my relationship with you," she admitted. "I'm learning how to stand on my own now, and it's terrifying but also liberating. I don't expect forgiveness, Natalie, but I want you to know I'm working to become someone worthy of being in your life again." Dad's apology came more slowly and with greater difficulty. Our first meeting was awkward, with him vacillating between defensiveness and contrition. By our third conversation, he had progressed enough in his recovery to take full responsibility. "I was a terrible father to you," he said plainly. "I took advantage of your generosity, resented your success, and then punished you for setting boundaries. Nothing can erase what I did, but I'm committed to being a better person going forward." In late summer, we attempted our first family gathering since Christmas, a simple barbecue at a public park, neutral territory for everyone. The conversation was sometimes strained, old tensions occasionally surfacing, but we managed to share a meal without major conflict. Tyler made us laugh with stories from his customer service adventures. Mom brought a homemade pie. Dad refrained from offering unsolicited advice or criticism. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't the close-knit family dynamic portrayed in holiday movies. But it was authentic, with each of us showing up as our real selves rather than playing assigned roles in a dysfunctional system. The most profound change was in our perspective. We had survived the collapse of our family structure and emerged as individuals with clearer boundaries and healthier expectations. The financial crisis had ultimately forced changes that were painful but necessary. As I reflect now on that disastrous Christmas dinner and its aftermath, I recognize it as both an ending and a beginning. It ended the illusion that financial sacrifice could purchase family harmony. It began a journey toward authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than obligation or dependency. I've learned that family love should never come with a price tag. Supporting loved ones is natural and beautiful when it flows from genuine care, not manipulation or entitlement. I've learned that enabling harmful behavior isn't kindness, even when it feels like sacrifice. And I've learned that sometimes walking away is necessary not just for self-preservation, but to create the possibility of something healthier for everyone. To those watching who might be trapped in similar situations, financially supporting family members who don't appreciate your sacrifices, feeling obligated to maintain destructive patterns, afraid that setting boundaries means ending relationships completely, I want you to know that reclaiming your resources isn't selfish. It might be the catalyst that forces necessary change for everyone involved. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did you handle the guilt and emotional fallout? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else find the courage to make necessary changes in their own life. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to see more content about family dynamics, financial independence, and healthy relationships. Hit the share button if you know someone who needs to hear this message. Thank you for joining me on this journey of reflection. Remember, true family supports each other's growth and independence, not creates dependencies that hold everyone back. Wishing you the strength to set boundaries where needed and the wisdom to rebuild what's worth saving.